I'm going to share with you a little leftovers hack using instant mashed potatoes. So we're gonna just mix some all-purpose flour, add a bit of mashed potatoes to that, and mix it all together, and we're going to make a hot water dumpling dough. So I had shared my recipe for easy dumpling dough in a previous video, but usually I just kind of go for it with feel, and once you do this a few times you'll get the hang of it. But basically you'll just add boiling water bit by bit and a little bit of room temperature water until the flour and water and everything comes together pretty nicely. It was still a little bit dry, so just another splash of room temp water, and once everything kind of comes together and clumps up as you're squishing it, that should be pretty good to go. And at first it might feel kind of dry, but as you work things together, that elbow grease will turn the mixture into a nice soft lump of dough. And once I've kneaded it a few times and the dough keeps its shape, so basically if I press my finger into it, it'll stay, then I'll just go ahead and kind of smooth it back up into a ball and cover it with a damp paper towel or cloth for around 15 minutes while I prepare the filling. So earlier in the day we had roasted some leeks and made some tomato bean mix, but we wanted to upgrade it and have it a different way later. So I'm just cutting, crushing, mashing, mushing everything into a paste basically so that we can wrap them with dough, and also just adding the rest of the instant potato mix into the mixture, because Chinese culture isn't the only culture that makes dumplings with unleavened dough. In Poland and other countries in Central or Eastern Europe, dumplings are made with onions and mashed potatoes, and they're called pierogi. So I kind of went with a lazy version of that and also a creative version by making my own shapes and basically just mixing my leftovers of the leeks and beans and tomatoes with that instant mashed potatoes you saw, as well as adding some of the mashed potato to the dough. So I'm just gonna roll out some discs of dough. You can make them smaller. I just made them pretty big because this was actually at the end of a very, very long week for me. So I just wanted to make something fun and easy to enjoy. So to make that cute little sun shape in the corner up there, I just combined 2 discs of dough with a nice lump of filling in the middle, sealed up the edges with a fork. This is a really great way to make sure that your dumpling is sealed extremely well, and I think it makes a really nice look too. So this is one of my favorite folds for sure. And what I did was use the fork to also cut 6 cuts equidistant around the circle, and just folded the extra pieces of dough under to make a little triangle shape so I could make the dumpling look a lot like a star. I'll show you a different method later. This one was a little bit finicky, but it definitely worked out pretty well. I was going for kind of a star, sun, moon kind of theme, so after making this star-shaped dumpling, I wanted to make kind of like a crescent moon, as you can see up in the corner. So instead of using 2 sheets this time, I just used one, folded in half, crimped the edges, and then used this folding technique that is popular in pierogi, but also in Latin American empanadas. So I really love making dumplings and working with dough because it is evident that across so many different cultures, this is a staple in cuisine, and I find that to be kind of a beautiful thing. And I also find it to be a great canvas for being creative, because this kind of style of cooking and eating transcends lots of different cultures. So I just made the ends pointy and bent it a little bit to make it look a little bit more like a moon, and they ended up turning out really cute, so I'm definitely really happy with them. Another technique is to roll out your dough into a giant flat sheet and then use some sort of jar or pint glass like I'm using here to cut out circles. This will make sure that your circles are the same shape, which makes dumpling folding a lot easier, especially if you want to do that kind of sun technique where you're going to need 2 discs of approximately the same size. And you can just crumple up the rest of the dough that didn't make it into discs, roll it out again, and then cut more. And sometimes it helps for the dough to rest if it's being a little tough to roll out, so that's why I just kind of set things aside and started wrapping my new little set of dumplings. These pierogi are a lot smaller than the other ones I made initially, which is kind of nice because sometimes you just want a quick bite. The ones I made here are still a lot bigger than the traditional tiny pierogi, so I definitely recommend you look up different folding techniques and think about the way that you want to eat your dumplings and just experiment with different techniques for folding. I like to get creative, so making a bigger dumpling allows for more intricate designs like this. Since the folding and tucking technique earlier was a little bit difficult, this time I decided just to cut out the extra pieces so I can make more prongs on the star, and then just the leftover pieces can be combined and rolled out again. And these freeze really well too, so I just put them on a plate, stick them in the freezer for around 2 or 3 hours until they harden up, and then you want to pull them off the plate so they don't freeze to the plate, and then you can throw them in a bag or something. Alright, now it's time to start getting cooking. So while I wait for the water to boil in the back, I'm going to melt some vegan butter, add a teaspoon of flour, and this is going to make a roux. The flour is going to cook, and this is going to allow our sauce to get nice and thickened at the end. So you can use a whisk. I didn't want to scratch my pot, so I just used a wooden spatula and kept stirring while I added some plant milk, which was coconut milk in this case, and some salt and seasonings. This is just some cheap garlic salt kind of blend, and just keep stirring to make sure that the flour doesn't clump up or anything too much. And once the water is boiled in the back, you can go ahead and throw in some of your pierogi. If they're from frozen, it might take a little bit longer, but really it'll only take a few minutes to cook. And I'm adding some cashew butter in here as well. This is the first time I'm ever using this, but ground cashews are really great for vegan sauces, and it ended up turning out really good too. And of course some nutritional yeast, which always adds a nice umami, cheesy kind of flavor to a plant-based sauce. And once the pierogi are finished boiling, you can just go ahead and ladle them out into a plate or a bowl and serve with some of the cream sauce that you made, even some butter or gravy or anything like that. And you can add some water if the sauce is too thick, or more plant milk. It's very forgiving, so go with whatever consistency you like best. So this did not look as appetizing as I hoped it would, but it was certainly very delicious. So after I topped with a little bit of fennel leaf, I just dug right in, and it was super hearty and super satisfying. But let me show you a different way to cook them using a dumpling skirt inspired by Sola from Bon Appetit. So you're just going to use about a half cup of water, add a teaspoon each of cornstarch and flour, and also some salt or rice vinegar if you want for flavor. So what you're going to want to do is get a nonstick skillet, add some oil to it, and this is essential. You want to add enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan, and I'll tell you in a moment why. But first off, we're going to pan fry the top of the dumpling a little bit just to give it some texture and flavor and crunch. But soon, once we get this nice crispiness, we're going to flip these over onto the other side. So now we have both sides getting nice and crispy. So it is important you kind of place them the top side down on the first run. Then we'll add the smaller dumplings here, and then go ahead and add our slurry that we made. You can just go ahead and add a little bit more oil if some is missing, and just pour the whole thing in there. In this video, you'll see that I kept adding it here and there, but half cup is perfect for a 10-inch skillet this size, as Sola already said in her video, so just trust her, trust that expert. And science time. Now I'm going to show you why we need oil. So here is condition 1, where we have a dry pan, and you can see the skirt really is ugly. It is brittle. It does not really add much in terms of looks or any sort of texture or appeal. So that's what happens when we don't use oil. But in condition 2 in our experiment, let's make sure that the pan has a nice layer of oil covering the entire bottom. Then we're just going to pour in the rest of the slurry. This was the same mixture as the one that I showed you just before this, but this time we have some oil, and you can see some nice bubbles already forming, because what's happening is the hydrophobic oil is creating pressure to push away the stuff that's dissolved in water, and this is going to allow things to cook in a pattern where we see these nice bubbles where there's no skirt, and this is what we want. So make sure you use oil when you are making a dumpling skirt, otherwise it is not going to work. So after the slurry has provided enough steam to cook the dumplings a bit, you can go ahead and take the lid off and let the water evaporate. And that is really what is going to allow the skirt to form, is when the water evaporates and the oil is pushing the mixture of the starch that's dissolved in the water apart while it cooks. And you can even add more slurry to the parts that aren't covered, and make sure you move the pan so that the fire is under that area. Add more oil if you need to, in order to create that hydrophobic action that will create this beautiful pattern. This is pretty forgiving if you just pay attention to where the fire is and where your slurry needs to cook more. And as you watch it cook, you'll notice that things will start to crisp up and start to become golden brown as the oil basically starts to deep fry the slurry. And once everything is nice and cooked and things are not stuck to the pan, you can go ahead and slide it into a plate, or you can even flip these over upside down so you can see the skirt a little bit better. And then I'm serving it here with a spicy chili sauce using some Chinese as well as this Hungarian spicy sauce that my sister bought for me. It is really nice. And then adding a little bit of mala chili oil as well. So I have some regrets about this. It was so oily already from frying the dumpling skirt that I really don't think I needed to add more chili oil on top. So it looks really pretty, but I actually preferred it more with that cream sauce that I showed earlier. You can see they're fried beautifully. You can even fry the pre-boiled ones. That's a kind of more traditional pierogi cooking method anyways. But either way, they're super, super delicious. I hope this inspired you to have some fun, so please share with me your creations on Twitter or on Instagram. I'd love to see what you make. Thank you!